So what's fascinating is that this brick was excavated twice. By us in 2016 from the huge spoil heap behind us, and by Ernest de Sarzec in the late 19th century. And what's crazy is that this brick was excavated 3 times, by us in 2016, by Ernest de Sarzec in the late 19th century, but also by the workers of Alexander the Great at the end of the 4th century BC. And that is the magic of archaeology. Hello, my name is Sebastian Ray. I'm the curator for ancient Mesopotamia at the British Museum.
Welcome to my corner!
So welcome to Telo, the ancient Sumerian city of Girsu in southern Iraq. Now Girsu is one of the great treasures of Iraq and world heritage. Now this is the site which revealed to the world more than 140 years ago the existence of the Sumerian civilization. I'm standing in front of one of the greatest temples of ancient Mesopotamia. And you can see the remains of this temple, but you see also remnants of a series of excavations. Now the story that I'm going to tell you is fascinating but extremely complicated because it involves a number of actors and heroes and gods and kings and archaeologists. So the fascinating sequence we have here starts 4,000 years ago with the building of the temple of the god Girsu, the hero god, the defender of the cosmos. The man, the king, who built the temple, who ruled the city of Girsu, was named King Gudea. Now he was one of the great heralds of the Mesopotamian culture. And he built this temple at the end of the 3rd millennium BC. The whole city of Girsu was abandoned at the very beginning of the 2nd millennium. And for about 1,200 years, the site of Telo was completely abandoned, until 1877. A French diplomat, Ernest de Sarzec, who is posted as the vice-consul of France in Bassora, hears the story of someone discovering an important statue at a site called Telo. He decides to travel to the site of Telo, and Sarzec starts excavating in 1877. And through the course of his excavations, he finds many other statues belonging to Gudea, but also inscriptions, clay nails, bricks, a wealth of important objects from the Sumerian times. And then very quickly he finds this building, a building that was made with 5 bricks. Most of the bricks had an inscription which commemorates the building of the shrine for the god Girsu. But some of the bricks in the same walls of this shrine had an inscription which was in Aramaic and Greek, so written about 1,500 years after the reign of Gudea. How on earth was it possible that these 2 bricks ended up in the same building? So this became one of the greatest headaches in Sumerian archaeology until in 2016, the British Museum decides to reopen excavations at the site of Telo, ancient Girsu.
So when we arrived at Girsu, no one had excavated there since the French archaeologists left the site in 1933. And after 83 years, the archaeology that had been left exposed by them had suffered major damage due to erosion. So our first step was to stabilize and save as much of the site as possible from further damage. Now this was critical for the bridge of Girsu, the oldest bridge in the world, which had lost much of its foundations and was at risk of collapsing. So together with our Iraqi colleagues, we started a program of building new bricks and rebuilding those foundations to stabilize the bridge. And we also started excavating through the many spoil heaps, the large mounds of dirt left behind by Sarzec's team, rescuing objects which had been discarded during their excavations. And this is how we ended up excavating those 2 bricks that had already been excavated by Sarzec in the late 1800s. But on top of that, we wanted to excavate new areas of the site to make new discoveries and to hopefully answer some of the questions Sarzec and his colleagues were never able to. And in 2016, on the first year of excavations, we found the temple of Girsu built by Gudea in the late 3rd millennium BC. Now, the reason Sarzec had never found the temple was that it was deeper underground than he had ever dug. And ironically, he had actually buried much of the temple under his own spall heaps. So we had proof that Sarzec had never found the Sumerian temple, which left us with new question. What was the building Sarzec had excavated? Why was it filled with Sumerian objects, including the statue of Gudea? And why was it built with bricks made 1500 years apart from each other? So we continued to excavate Sarzec's building, and in 2022 we found what we believe was the true meaning and function of that building.
So I know this story is extremely complicated, but I can help you understand it with only 2 bricks. As you can see, the 2 bricks are very similar in shape, in size, in texture, but they have 2 different inscriptions. Now this is the standard inscription that Gudea, the king, uses time and time again on thousands of bricks, votive artifacts that he dedicated to the god Ningirsu. So I'll read out the inscription for you. It always starts by the name of the god, because of course the king Gudea builds the temple for his god Ningirsu. And the very first sign is a star. Now this is the emblem of divinity, a Sumerian sign called Dingir. Literally, it means God. And you know, if you see a star, that the name that follows will be a divine name. So Dingir, the god, Ningirsu. That's his name in Sumerian script. The second line is his function, the title of the god Ningirsu, and he is the hero, the warrior god. The third line is the name of another god. This is Enlil, the king of the gods, and he's also Ningirsu's father. The fourth line is the name of the king, Gudea. Gudea doesn't use the title king. He's not the king of Girsu, he is the Ensi. This means he is the envoy, the representative of the god, Ningirsu. Follows the name of the city-state that Gudea rules, Lagash. Girsu was the sacred city of the city-state of Lagash. Now then, there's another part of the inscription, which is very important, and I'll come back to this. Follows the name of the temple itself, E Ninu, the white thunderbird. Now this is the name of the sanctuary that Gudea builds for his god Ningirsu. E in Sumerian means house. And it's important to know that for the Sumerians, there are no distinctions between a house and a temple, because of course the temple was considered the house of the god. 50 is a sacred symbolic number for the Sumerians. Now, the number 50 belonged to Enlil, the father of Ningirsu, the supreme god of the Sumerian pantheon. And so his father, the father of Ningirsu, Enlil, gives his son his 50 powers. This is why the name of the temple means House 50. You can translate this as the house of the 50 powers, or the house of the ultimate powers. And the thunderbird is the lion-headed eagle that you see on a lot of iconographic representations of the Sumerian time, and it's the avatar of the god Ningirsu. At the end of the inscription is, of course, the wording, I have built. So Gudea saying that I have built and restored the temple to its proper place. Now I'll come back to this part of the inscription because this is really important, and it's one of the most powerful statements ever written anywhere in the world. And it's short, and it means literally to make things function as they should. Meaning to maintain the cosmic order that was determined by the gods at the very origins of time. So this is why Gudea is building this temple for the god Ningirsu, to maintain the cosmic order. So I'll read the inscription in full. For the god Ningirsu, the warrior of Enlil, Gudea, ruler of Lagash, made things function as they should, and built and restored the temple, House 50, the white thunderbird. So next to this brick, the Sumerian brick, is another brick. It's very similar in size, in texture, in color, and it was found on top of this brick in this wall. Now on the inscription, you have the name of the priest, Adad Nadinache, written in two languages, in Aramaic first, from right to left, and in ancient Greek, from left to right. And you can see the name Adad Nadinache written here in ancient Greek. Now these bricks were found in this wall that Ernest de Sarzeq excavated at the end of the 19th century. When he was excavating this building, he thought he had discovered the palace of this king, the Sumerian ruler Gudea. But when his colleagues at the Louvre Museum were looking at the inscriptions, they realized that, indeed, how was it possible that a brick with an inscription in ancient Greek and Aramaic, so written about 1,500 years after the reign of Gudea, how was it possible that these two bricks ended up in a wall of the same building? Now this goes back to the story of the sequence that I'm trying to explain. This man, a priest called Adad Nadinache, he lives at the very end of the 4th century, at the time of the conquest of Alexander. Now Alexander is a key player here because he believed he was the son of Zeus and the brother of Heracles, the hero god. And of course, there was an attempt by the Greco-Macedonians to associate their own gods with the ancestral gods of the Mesopotamian culture. And it's not impossible to imagine, one of the first things he did when he arrived in Babylon was to ask the priest of Babylon, which is the most important hero god of your pantheon? And they would have said, the god named Jérsu. Following that, Alexander must have asked, where was he worshipped? And they must have said, the priest in Babylon. Well, in an old ancient site called Jérsu. And I think it's very likely that Alexander sent a man, this man called Adad Nadinache, to the site of Jérsu to re-excavate the buried temple, the temple dedicated to Jérsu. Adad Nadinache was perhaps one of the earliest excavators of ancient Iraq. He excavated the temple, decided to reuse bricks from the original Sumerian temple, copies the Sumerian King Gudea by stamping his brick with his name, Adad Nadinache, on bricks that are of the same size and shape as the original Sumerian bricks, and built a shrine dedicated to Heracles and Ningirsu. What's remarkable is that he also redisplays the statue of the King Gudea within his shrine. And this is the context that Ernest de Sarzeq rediscovers the statue of Gudea. So not within the Sumerian temple, but within a Hellenistic shrine dedicated to Heracles. The clue of this is within the name Adad Nadinache. Now this is a very strange, enigmatic name. It's clearly not the real name of this priest. It's in fact Babylonian, and it means the storm or thunder god Adad, the giver of the two brothers. Now, who are the brothers? The key to understand the whole function and the meaning of this name was unlocked when we discovered a coin which was buried at the entrance of this shrine under a religious podium. Now the coin is a coin of Alexander that was minted in Babylon just after the conquest. The coin has on one side the face of the hero god Heracles, and on the other side the storm god Zeus. So in a way, Adad Nadinache, the name, means Zeus, the storm god, the giver of brothers. Who are the two brothers? Well, both Heracles, his ancestral counterparts, then Jérsu and Alexander. So the discovery of this coin at the entrance of this shrine during our excavations unlocked the whole meaning and function of the building built in the Hellenistic period by Adad Nadinache. This was, in a way, to honor the ancestral past of the Sumerian times. But more importantly, it was to link Alexander to the ancient Sumerians. Now, as you can see behind me, is a giant spoil heap. Now, this is the remnants of the old digs carried out by the French. When the French were digging, they had to move the earth from their excavations to a dump, to a spoil heap. That's what we call a spoil heap. And you can see behind me, poking out of the section, are numerous bricks. The 2 bricks you have in front of me came from this enormous spoil heap, the discarded objects of the French excavations. So we re-excavated these objects that Sázek had excavated in the late 19th century, but he, remember, was excavating the Hellenistic shrine of Adad-Nadinache. So Adad-Nadinache, already in the late 4th century, had excavated part of the Sumerian temple and must have also discovered these bricks, which he used to build the shrine for Ningesu Heracles. And that is the magic of archaeology.
Want to find out more about our excavations at Geersu? Of course you do. There's a playlist in the top right of your screen with all the videos we've made in Iraq. And before you ask, no, it doesn't have a video about that 90-year-old pair of French undies we excavated. But if you ask nicely enough in the comments, we'll see what we can do. Next episode of Curator's Corner is all about the history of a Roman sculpture, specifically the history of that sculpture since it arrived at the museum over 200 years ago.